On the 12th of September, demonstrations took place across the country in support of a pay rise for nurses. Grassroots group Nurses United UK are calling on Westminster to approve a 15% raise across the board for all health and social care workers. This was the second of these national demonstrations. On both days, the BBC failed to report the demonstrations in central London. The demonstrators met outside the BBC to point out that the corporation had double standards. At the height of the pandemic, the BBC and the rest of the media were desperate to interview nurses to push the nurse heroes narrative. But when the same nurses took to the streets to demand a pay rise, the BBC was nowhere in sight. The mainstream media channels and internet platforms through which we get our news are owned by those from the richest and most powerful class of people, the ruling class. The news we receive from them is heavily biased to justify and perpetuate this status quo.
That are working and fighting in the NHS for the public's life still. We lost 640 health workers because of COVID. We're standing outside the BBC now because you've completely dropped us. You've dropped us like a stone. Why? Why have you dropped us? What have you been told not to report? Because I think when you have the same health workers outside your corporation telling you that the NHS is on its knees, that we cannot carry on like this, that we need a pay rise to save the NHS, and you aren't covering it, something is shockingly wrong with the press in this country. So that's why we're here.
No attempt was made to build up stocks of PPE to protect health workers, despite 2 months' warning that the pandemic was going to hit the UK. Over 500 people died. This government has blood on its hands.
In central London, actually, from my own personal experience, we've been quite lucky in terms of our PPE. But over the last month, whilst I've been leafleting for our protests and going around different hospitals, I've spoken to various staff in critical care in the wards, and it's so bad how they've been treated and the kind of PPE that they've been wearing. Like, I've heard that they weren't fit tested to wear an FFP3 mask and were given these expired masks from 8 years ago, and they all caught COVID, and I just couldn't believe that this is what our government has done to us, that we still are taking the risk to take our risk and to go to work and still catch COVID, and some of them have died. There's over 620 healthcare workers that have died as a result of this.
People should never be nervous about asking for a pay rise. Ever since my mum came to this country from Dublin and started nursing in the 50s, round the corner she lived and worked, people have loved health workers and they think we deserve the pay, and we mustn't be shy about asking for it, because we do bloody deserve it. And
any of us will see a BBC journalist actually come out of their offices, come down here and have the courtesy to speak to the health workers that saved the lives of the patients in our beds, in our hospitals during the COVID pandemic. Where are you? Where are you now? It's 2 minutes out of your offices down here. You've been an absolute disgrace. You should be ashamed of yourselves. We are the NHS. You should be doing your jobs as journalists and covering us when we say we can't go on. So,
on the 5th of April, one of my colleagues wrote on Facebook that she goes to work fearing for her life, that they don't care enough about PPE. And on the 5th of May, she died. She was the mother of 2 teenage daughters. She was a fantastic nurse. And there are 260 other people like her. And that should never have been allowed to happen. And when Amira talks about fit testing, to my knowledge, I've personally never been fit tested, and I've been wearing a mask like this all night on nights, and I will be expected to wear this again until somebody is definitely proven COVID, and it's just not good enough. So we need many more of us activists out here doing this. It really is fantastic what we're doing today.
there they are. They can't even be bothered to send a journalist, a reporter or a crew out to cover their health workers arguing about low pay in the NHS. An absolute disgrace. BBC, shame on you. BBC, shame on you. BBC, shame on you. BBC, shame on you! BBC, shame on you!
The NHS wasn't in a fit state to combat the outbreak of COVID-19. 56% of NHS beds were cut in the last 30 years. In 2016, a dummy run to test the ability of the NHS to combat a pandemic showed that it would not be able to cope. Nothing was done to rectify this. This is because providing more money and resources would hinder the process of privatising the NHS, a process followed by both Labour and Conservative governments. This pandemic could and should have been fully prepared for. The lockdown of healthy people could have been avoided, and the UK government's actions have, as ever, strengthened the wealth and power of the ruling class of this country at the direct expense of the general public. The union bureaucrats have done nothing to stop the erosion of nurses' pay or the undermining of the NHS. Grassroots nurses are angry and have realised that the only way to get any action is to take to the streets themselves.